Welcome to Lecture 19, where we will go over the reproductive system. We're now going to take a look at the human reproductive system. Humans have both external and internal reproductive organs. The internal reproductive organs include the gonads that produce the gametes as well as hormones, accessory glands that secrete additional products to aid in gamete movement, as well as ducts and chambers that carry the gametes and the secretions and may also house the embryo as seen in females. External reproductive organs include the scrotum and penis in males and the labia and clitoris in females. We're now going to examine the male reproductive system. The male reproductive system consists of testes. Testes produce the sperm in the seminiferous tubules. The testes are typically housed in the scrotal sac, which sits outside of the body wall. Testes drop just before birth, as optimal temperatures for sperm development are slightly below body temperature. Some animals, however, can maintain the testes internally if their body temperatures are cool enough to support sperm maturation. This is seen in some aquatic mammals. The penis is the structure that contains the urethra and is surrounded by layers of spongy erectile tissue. In general, sperm mature and become motile within the epididymis. They then travel through the vas deferens to the ejaculatory duct and then out the urethra. The diagram to the right shows the major structures in the male reproductive system. Use this diagram to follow through the next few slides. There are three main accessory glands that are present in the male reproductive system. These glands contribute to the secretions that lead to the formation of semen, which occurs when these secretions combine with sperm. These accessory organs include the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and bulbourethral glands. The seminal vesicles produce the majority of semen, specifically producing mucus, coagulants, ascorbic acid, fructose, and prostaglandins. The seminal vesicles empty their secretory products into the ejaculatory duct. The prostate gland secretes anticoagulants and nutrients like citrate into the urethra, also through a series of ducts. The bulbourethral glands secrete a neutralizing mucus into the urethra. They may also prematurely release sperm. This diagram here shows the major structures and accessory glands that are present within the male reproductive system. We're now going to take a look at the major components of the female reproductive system. Please refer to the diagram to the right to understand where these structures occur in the female reproductive tract. Ovaries are considered to be the gonads that produce the eggs. They consist of an outer cortex that contains the oocytes, or developing eggs, that reside in follicles. These follicles are surrounded by support cells that help to protect and nourish the developing egg. The oviduct is also known as the fallopian tube. This has a funnel-like opening that is lined with cilia. The cilia will beat to help receive and direct the egg from the ovary and lead it to the uterus. The uterus is a thick muscular organ that is lined with many blood vessels, which is termed the endometrium or endometrial lining. The uterus will eventually support the development of an embryo. The cervix is located at the neck of the uterus, and then this is the structure that leads to the vagina. The vagina is considered to be a muscular and elastic chamber that serves as a site for sperm deposition during copulation. It also serves as a passageway for offspring during the process of birth. There are vestibular glands that are present near the vaginal opening. These glands help to produce lubricating mucus during the arousal stage. The hymen is considered to be a thin piece of tissue that covers the vaginal opening at birth. It typically wears away with age as well as with activity. The vulva is considered to be the exterior skin folds that cover the entrance to the vagina. It consists of the clitora and labia minora and majora. The clitoris is erectile tissue that consists of the body and glands. It contains a high amount of nerve endings and is covered and protected by the prepuce. The labia minora consists of slender skin folds that enclose the vaginal opening, clitoris, as well as the opening to the urethra. The labia majora, however, are thicker skin folds that enclose and protect the vaginal opening. Please refer to this diagram to understand the location of the major structures of the female reproductive system. Also note that mammary glands are present in both males and females. Although mammary glands play an important role in reproduction, specifically in milk production, they are not considered to be a part of the reproductive system. We are now going to take a look at the process of gametogenesis, which is how the gametes are produced. This can be referred to as spermatogenesis in males and oogenesis in females. Gametogenesis leads to the production of haploid gametes from precursor cells, usually through a series of meiotic divisions. Spermatogenesis occurs throughout the lifetime of a male. It quickly leads to the production of hundreds of millions of sperm on a daily basis. Although sperm are produced daily, they take approximately 7 weeks to fully mature as they travel through the seminiferous tubules. Cytokinesis during this meiotic process is considered to be equal. Thus, it leads to the production of 4 haploid gametes from one gamete precursor cell. Oogenesis, on the other hand, begins during embryogenesis with the formation of immature eggs. However, these eggs will then suspend their development. They will mature sequentially from the onset of puberty until menopause. In oogenesis, cytokinesis is considered to be unequal. As a result, this leads to the production of 1 large egg as opposed to 4 as we see in spermatogenesis. Because there is unequal cytokinesis, this leads to the production of polar bodies that eventually will degenerate. We're first going to take a look at the process of spermatogenesis. Note that the presence of primordial germ cells line the seminiferous tubules. As these germ cells mature and differentiate and develop, they will move towards the lumen. Sertoli cells are present to help nourish the sperm and cells as they mature. Also note the process of the mitotic divisions that lead to the production of the primary spermatocyte. This is considered to be a diploid cell, hence it is referred to as 2N. This is the pregametic cell as it matures to become a primary spermatocyte. Once the primary spermatocyte forms, then this will undergo 2 rounds of meiosis to eventually lead to the production of an early spermatid. These early spermatids will then undergo differentiation to mature into a mature sperm cell. A mature sperm is considered to be motile with a head, neck, midpiece, and tail region. The sperm is considered to be a highly adapted structure to locate and fertilize an egg. Some of these adaptations include the presence of mitochondria to provide energy for the movement of the flagellum, an acrosome, which is a specialized region that contains enzymes to aid in the penetration of the egg. The head also contains a haploid nucleus. This will eventually fuse with the nucleus within the egg. We're now going to take a look at the production of the egg, or oogenesis. Remember that oogenesis will halt development. It halts development specifically at prophase 1. This means that it will be halted in the primary oocyte stage. At puberty, FSH, or follicle-stimulating hormone, is released. This will stimulate the oocyte development. However, this will then be halted again at the secondary oocyte stage, specifically at metaphase 2. Meiosis will then continue only when a sperm successfully enters the oocyte. As the egg develops, it will then form a primary oocyte. Also note that this occurs within the embryo, and also note that this is still considered to be a diploid cell. This primary oocyte, upon puberty, will then undergo meiosis 1. It will then continue into meiosis 2. However, this will be halted during the metaphase stage. Once sperm successfully enters the egg, meiosis 2 will then continue to lead to a fertilized egg. Note that it is also considered to be haploid, and we have the production of a second polar body. Polar bodies will generally degenerate as the oocyte matures. Also note the development of the follicle. As the primary oocyte develops, it will develop within the follicle, and the follicle will grow as well. Once a follicle is mature, it will then rupture, leading to ovulation. After the egg leaves the follicle will start to degenerate and form the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum is very important in secreting estradiol and progesterone. This will help to maintain the uterine lining in the event of a successful pregnancy. If the egg is unfertilized, it will degenerate. As these hormone levels drop, another follicle will be allowed to develop. In general, reproduction is highly regulated. The hypothalamus and anterior pituitary, as well as the gonads, play a very important role in regulating mammalian reproduction. The regulation of reproduction involves tropic as well as sex hormones. Tropic hormones typically regulate other glands and endocrine cells, whereas sex hormones are directly produced by the gonads. If you recall the endocrine pathway, the hypothalamus gland releases GnRH, or gonadotropin releasing hormone. This will then act on the anterior pituitary, which causes the secretion of FSH as well as LH, also known as follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. These hormones act on the gonads. This will cause the gonads to release testosterone, estradiol, as well as progesterone. It is important to note that all three hormones are produced in males and females. However, the balance will differ between the sexes. For instance, testosterone tends to be much higher in males. In embryos, the presence of these androgens and estrogens lead to the primary sex characteristics such as the development of the vesicles, ducts, and external reproductive structures in males, and the development of ovaries, fallopian tubes, and uterus in females. During puberty, the hypothalamus will stimulate the anterior pituitary to release hormones that stimulate the gonads. During this time, this will typically lead to the development of what is termed secondary sex characteristics. This typically leads to the sexual dimorphism between males and females. For instance, high levels of testosterone in male bulls lead to the growth of antlers, increased aggression, as well as territorial behavior. Note the secondary sex characteristics between the male and female bull moose as seen here. In general, newborns are typically assigned a biological sex based on their external genitalia, and their external genitalia are usually a reflection of their chromosomal makeup, XX in females versus XY in males. However, there are many genetic abnormalities that may arise that change the genetic combination of the sex chromosomes. In addition, there are also hormonal effects that can also play a role, and these can alter the development as well as the function of the sex tissue. In general, the Y chromosome carries what is termed the SRY gene, or sex-determining region. This directs the development of the testes. This is not typically present in XX embryos. As a result, the ovaries develop. Gender identity typically refers to a person's sense of being. Cisgender refers to a person having the same gender as their biological sex, while transgender incurs that there is a mismatch between a person's assigned sex and their gender identity. Sexual orientation refers to what a person is attracted to, both physically, emotionally, and/or sexually. We're now going to take a look at hormonal control in males. FSH and LH regulate spermatogenesis in the testes. FSH, or follicle-stimulating hormone, acts on the Sertoli cells, which nourish the sperm and also can produce inhibin. LH, on the other hand, stimulates Leydig cells. These Leydig cells will produce testosterone as well as other androgens and hormones, which will in turn stimulate sperm cell development. These hormones include oxytocin, renin, angiotensin, growth factors, prostaglandins, and corticotropin-releasing factor. When considering sperm production in males, there are two negative feedback loops that occur. High testosterone levels will inhibit the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. In addition, inhibin will inhibit the anterior pituitary. Take a look at the diagram to the right to understand these negative feedback loops. As a result, androgen levels are kept within a normal functioning range. Hormonal control in females involves two closely linked reproductive cycles. These cycles help to maximize embryo success for implantation and development. These are the ovarian cycle and uterine or menstrual cycle. The ovarian cycle refers specifically to the maturation and development of the follicle, the release of the oocyte, and the degeneration of the corpus luteum. The uterine or menstrual cycle refers to the thickening or action of the uterine lining, and when it is shed if fertilization does not occur. This leads to menstruation. If the lining is not shed externally, then with animals that have this, it would be termed the estrous cycle. This would then lead to an increase in female receptivity during the ovulation process. In general, in females, FSH and LH, follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, stimulate the follicles in the ovary to produce estradiol. Estradiol will initiate the thickening of the uterine lining. It also acts as a positive feedback to stimulate the hypothalamus to release gonadotropin-releasing hormone. This will then increase FSH and LH. We are first going to take a look at the stages of the ovarian cycle. If you recall, the hypothalamus releases gonadotropin-releasing hormone. This will act on the anterior pituitary to release both FSH and LH. The first phase of the ovarian cycle is the follicular phase. This typically occurs between day 0 and 14. During this phase, FSH and LH act to stimulate the follicles to develop and secrete estradiol. Although this acts on several follicles, leading to the development of many follicles, only one will fully mature. Low levels of estradiol will inhibit the pituitary, thus keeping FSH and LH at low levels. However, as estradiol levels build in the body, this will then stimulate the hypothalamus to release gonadotropin-releasing hormone. This will act to increase the sensitivity of LH-producing cells. As a result, there is an overall surge in luteinizing hormone. In addition, there is a much smaller surge of follicle-stimulating hormone. This causes the follicle to mature, which will then form a bulge at the surface of the ovary. Note the diagram to the left that shows the developing oocyte, the follicular epithelium that helps to nourish and protect the oocyte, as well as the size of the follicle itself. Ovulation occurs on day 14. This will occur approximately 1 day after the luteinizing hormone surge. When ovulation occurs, the follicle and adjacent wall of the ovary will rupture. This will then release the secondary oocyte. Remember, the development of the oocyte is halted in females. The oocyte will then be directed into the fallopian tube. We then enter the luteal phase that occurs from day 15 to 28. Luteinizing hormone causes the follicle to form what is termed the corpus luteum, as seen here in the diagram to the left. The corpus luteum is important as it secretes progesterone and estradiol. These hormones will inhibit the hypothalamus and pituitary glands, which causes a decrease in the production of FSH and LH. This will prevent another oocyte from maturing during this time. If fertilization does not occur, low FSH and LH levels cause the corpus luteum to disintegrate and degenerate. This will then cause a decrease in the levels of progesterone and estradiol. This causes a negative feedback loop on the hypothalamus and pituitary to allow for the cycle to begin again. This diagram will show you the importance of FSH and LH during the ovarian cycle. Note the hormone levels and the development of the ovary as well as the formation of the corpus luteum. Also note the hormone levels of estradiol and progesterone. The balance of all of these hormones will control the ovarian cycle. We're now going to discuss what occurs during the menstrual cycle. Estradiol from the follicles helps to stimulate the thickening of the uterine wall. The first phase of the menstrual cycle occurs during day 6 to 14 and is termed the proliferative phase. Estradiol from the follicles stimulates the developing and thickening of the uterine wall. Progesterone and estradiol from the corpus luteum will help to maintain the lining and also will stimulate the growth of the endometrial glands. This is all in preparation for successful implantation. We then enter the secretory phase of the menstrual cycle, which occurs from day 15 to 28. A drop in hormones causes the arteries to constrict and the overall disintegration of the uterine lining. This will then lead to the menstrual phase that occurs from day 1 to 5. In this phase, the uterine lining is shed out the vagina. New sets of follicles will then begin to develop to begin the cycle again. This diagram depicts the ovarian cycle as well as the uterine cycle in relation to all of the hormones discussed: FSH, LH, estradiol, and progesterone. Also note the presence of negative and positive feedback loop and the interaction between the hypothalamus, the anterior pituitary, and the production of estradiol or progesterone. Negative feedback loops and positive feedback loops both help to regulate the reproductive cycle in females. Estradiol has opposite effects, whether it is at low or high levels. In general, low levels of estradiol will inhibit the pituitary gland, while high levels have a positive feedback loop and stimulate it, and as well as the hypothalamus gland. In general, the corpus luteum provides very important hormones such as estradiol and progesterone to help build the uterine lining in the event of successful fertilization.